February, 1916. Verdun, France. The winter trenches were filled with mud and fear. Artillery shells rained endlessly from the German lines. Soldiers huddled together, whispering prayers no one would hear. The front had become a maze of death and despair. The winter of 1916 had left Verdun in a state of endless devastation. Smoke and mud filled the horizon. Trenches carved deep into the earth were all that separated French and German soldiers. Every ridge, every crumpled tree, every shell crater told a story of failure and suffering. The landscape was unrecognizable. Once thriving villages were reduced to rubble. Barbed wire twisted like the limbs of fallen giants. The artillery fire never stopped, shaking the ground, tearing apart both men and morale. The French 72nd Division had been ordered to defend a sector near Fort Douaumont. Months of relentless fighting had already taken a toll. The men were exhausted, starved, and cold. Their uniforms were soaked with mud, their boots rotted from trench water. Supplies were scarce. Water from nearby streams smelled of decay. Bread was stale. Soldiers shared every morsel, knowing it might be the last. Hunger gnawed as relentlessly as the fear surrounding them. The Germans were advancing steadily. Every day brought new threats, new dead, new chaos. Lieutenant Marcel Duval walked the trench with a quiet determination. He moved from man to man, checking on injuries and trying to maintain discipline. Some soldiers had lost limbs. Others were shaking from the cold or trembling from the ceaseless bombardment. Many whispered prayers to gods they had long abandoned. The men were numb but alert. They had memorized the patterns of the shells. They knew when to duck, when to brace, and when to run, though escape was impossible. Outside the trench, the terrain had been transformed into a nightmare. Craters swallowed soldiers whole. Barbed wire, mangled and sharp, cut through mud and bodies alike. Shell fragments lay everywhere, silent reminders of past attacks. The air smelled of gunpowder, blood, and wet earth. At night, fog rolled over the trenches, thick and suffocating. The men could barely see the silhouettes of their comrades. Sounds were distorted by the hollowness of destruction. Orders from the high command were inconsistent. Reinforcements were promised but never arrived. Field phones had been destroyed. Runners sent between positions were killed or went missing. Communication was broken. Soldiers were trapped, isolated, and fully aware of it. The reality was clear: they could not advance. Retreat was not an option. They could only endure. Amid the chaos, small acts of humanity persisted. A soldier shared his last biscuit with a comrade. Another covered the body of a fallen friend with a muddy blanket. Lieutenant Duval kept a diary in secret, recording the names of those who fell beside him. The mud swallowed bodies quickly, leaving no trace. Each man carried the weight of uncertainty. They hoped for survival, for rescue, for some sign that the world above the trenches remembered them. Yet the war had no concern for hope. The men were trapped, caught between bombardment and the endless expanse of mud and death. Even in the quiet moments, fear lingered. Soldiers listened for sounds of approaching artillery, for whispers from other units, for signs of life outside the trenches. Every night was endless. Every day was survival. The 72nd Division was no longer just fighting the enemy. They were fighting the mud, the cold, the hunger, and the creeping sense of disappearance. Time had slowed. Life and death intertwined. The soldiers had become shadows, waiting in the frozen hell of Verdun for a relief that might never come. March 1916 brought no relief. The rain turned trenches into rivers of mud. Soldiers stood ankle-deep, sometimes knee-deep, in freezing water. frostbite and trench foot were rampant. Every step was agony. Supplies dwindled further. Bread, barely edible, was rationed. Water was scarce and often contaminated. Illness spread faster than bullets. Dysentery claimed as many lives as artillery. Soldiers coughed and shivered. Their uniforms were soaked through. Boots were rotted and unusable. The men looked like ghosts of themselves. Lieutenant Marcel Duval moved along the trench daily. He checked the wounded, offered quiet words of encouragement, and tried to maintain order. Yet every decision he faced carried the weight of death. Should he order an attempt to advance under fire? Should he keep men in the trench, knowing disease and starvation were slowly killing them? Every choice was impossible. The men trusted him, but even he could not stop the fear gnawing at their hearts. Outside the trench, the Germans were relentless. Artillery fire grew more precise. Mortar rounds crashed into the earth, filling the air with smoke and dust. Machine guns cut down anyone attempting to move. No man's land had become a cemetery. Men who ventured out to gather supplies rarely returned. Nightfall brought no relief. The fog thickened, mingling with the smoke from ongoing bombardments. Silence was never complete. In the distance, the sounds of dying men echoed endlessly. Communication with other French units had broken down entirely. Field telephones were destroyed. Messengers were killed. Runners disappeared into mud or were shot. Relief forces could not reach them. The 72nd Division was completely isolated. Soldiers realized they were alone. Fear and exhaustion became constant companions. Yet in the trench, small moments of humanity persisted. A man shared the last biscuit with a friend. Another tied a makeshift bandage on a comrade's leg. Lieutenant Duval recorded names in his diary. He noted every death, every disappearance. He knew that if he did not, history would forget them. By mid-March, the stalemate had hardened. The Germans pressed forward relentlessly. Every attempt to escape the trenches ended in death. Supplies ran even lower. Hunger, cold, and constant bombardment consumed the soldiers. They survived day by day, hour by hour, not for glory, not for victory, but to stay alive. Each shell explosion brought death closer. Each night, the men wondered if they would see the next sunrise. Despite despair, Lieutenant Duval tried to maintain structure. He assigned men to maintain trenches, carry water, and check on the wounded. Some obeyed, others moved sluggishly, too exhausted to follow orders. The division had become a shadow of itself. Names were remembered, but faces blurred. Soldiers were trapped, slowly being erased by the mud, the rain, and the relentless war above them. Time had stopped. The 72nd Division clung to survival, their bodies weary, their spirits fragile, their existence almost forgotten in the chaos of Verdun. April 1916 arrived with relentless bombardment. The trenches shook with each shell. The men of the 72nd Division were exhausted beyond comprehension. Faces were pale, eyes hollow, hands trembling. Mud clung to everything. Every movement was a battle against the earth itself. Artillery fire tore through the landscape, flattening trees and crumbling trenches. At dawn, a massive German assault struck the division. Machine guns opened fire across no man's land. Soldiers tried to move, but the ground was riddled with craters and barbed wire. Many fell instantly. Others were trapped in collapsed trenches. Screams echoed in the fog. Lieutenant Marcel Duval moved among the men, dragging the wounded into shallow depressions. The smell of blood and mud was thick. Every step brought another soldier fallen, another body to the mud. The men attempted a counteraction. They fired rifles and grenades from the trench, but German fire was precise, overwhelming, and unrelenting. Officers shouted orders that could not be obeyed. Some soldiers crawled into shell holes, trembling, too terrified to move. Panic spread quickly. Men who had once fought bravely were now shadows, frozen in fear. Every attempt to escape led to more deaths. By midday, half the men were gone. Communications were destroyed. No reinforcements appeared. Hunger, exhaustion, and fear crushed the remaining soldiers. Lieutenant Duval counted them. Only a fraction of the original unit remained. Each man clung to life by a thread. The trench had become a tomb. Those who survived stared silently at the devastation. The division's structure had dissolved. Names were spoken softly, almost in disbelief. Outside, Verdun remained a gray, ruined wasteland. Smoke rose from distant bombardments. The land itself seemed to mourn. Soldiers crouched in mud, watching the enemy advance, knowing any movement could be fatal. Lieutenant Duval wrote notes in his diary, listing names, details, and times. He knew these men might vanish completely, forgotten by history. Yet he wrote anyway. The diary was their only witness. As evening fell, the surviving soldiers huddled together. Rain soaked their bodies. Mud caked their uniforms. The cries of the wounded were muffled by the wind. No one spoke of victory. No one hoped for it. Survival alone had become their goal. The 72nd Division had been trapped, isolated, and systematically erased. Every shell, every gunshot, every step further into the mud marked another loss. Death and destruction were total. Verdun had consumed them, leaving only shadows of men who had once been soldiers. By May, the 72nd Division had ceased to exist. The trenches were empty. Shell holes filled with rain. Mud covered the footprints of those who had vanished. Weapons lay abandoned. Helmets were left behind. Boots were rotted. The surviving men were scattered. Few remained. Lieutenant Marcel Duval was among them. He moved silently through the abandoned trench. The mud was thick. The wind carried the smell of death. No voices answered his calls. No one came. Only the echoes of artillery remained in the distance. Letters and diaries lay buried in the mud. Names were written, but few would ever be read. The sacrifices of these men were erased by time. The battles continued elsewhere. Verdun was forgotten in the larger war. Historians recorded statistics. They counted dead and wounded, but the 72 ND Division's story disappeared. Its struggle was invisible. Its pain unacknowledged. The survivors walked through the ruins. Their uniforms were torn. Their faces hollow. Each step reminded them of friends who would never return. Each breath carried the weight of memories too heavy to speak aloud. They were alive, but part of them had already vanished. The mud, the rain, and the silence became their companions. Trench walls collapsed. Shell craters filled with water. Barbed wire rusted. Nature began to reclaim the battlefield. Yet the memory of men lost remained in faint whispers, too fragile to be seen by anyone else. Lieutenant Duval wrote a final note in his diary. He listed the names of those who had disappeared. He described the trenches, the mud, the sounds, the fear. He wrote for the world that might never read. For the history that would choose to forget. Time passed. Verdun changed. Cities rebuilt elsewhere. Battles moved forward. Yet the 72nd Division remained invisible. Their existence faded. The trenches dried, but the memories of men trapped in mud and fear vanished into nothing. Silence reigned. No memorials marked their struggle. No one recited their names. Only the mud remembered. Deadlock Hell. That was all that remained. Shadows of men, swallowed by Verdun, erased from history. Forgotten by generals. Forgotten by time. Forgotten by all who might have cared. The 72nd Division disappeared. Yet, in the quiet, the wind carried a whisper. A reminder of lives trapped, of courage, of suffering. They were gone. Forgotten. Erased. The world moved on. And in Verdun, nothing spoke of the men who had waited, fought, and vanished. Only silence remained. These stories are rarely told. Subscribe if you want to hear the next one.